I'm your host, Kinetic, and you're watching GameOnEnd. Hello and welcome. Today we're going to take a look at a few add-ons whose aim is to keep you on top of those procs, active abilities, and cooldowns. In WoW, we're in this constant struggle of too much information and not enough information. If you've ever tried any of the harder group content like Mythic Plus or Raiding, you're very aware that depending on the role you play, you just may not be able to really fully take in the zone that you're in or just the things that are going on. You know, there's a joke if you've ever healed in Raiding that you may not even know what the bosses look like. So, you know, we have to make these choices of how much information do we want right in front of us and how little so that we have our play area cleared. Now, depending on your role, that's harder to do. You know, if you are healing, then you really do have to have all the player frames in front of you and be able to see, you know, situational awareness and move out of mechanics and move into different areas and stuff like that. And it's very tough to come up with a UI that supports that. But for some of the other roles, you know, it can be much easier to simply just be able to see what abilities are proccing for you and what you need to cast when. And there's a lot of add-ons out there that try and help you to do that. And some are super complicated and some are super simple. Either way, if you play with the default UI or if you play with custom action bars, you know, there's a lot of things out there that can help you to just get that little bit of extra edge. So as always, we're going to use add-on control panel to enable and disable as we go. So let's get going. All right, we're going to start with the tried and true OmniCC. OmniCC has been around for a long time and for good reason. The ability to show cooldown counts on your action bars and on your abilities and stuff hasn't always existed in the game. In fact, it was not actually added in that long ago, but you still don't have any options to customize it. So let's take a look at the options here for OmniCC. Okay, so of course you have profiles. Most people are going to be fine with just setting up the default profile and using that for everything, but you can have multiple. You can also do custom rules here, which we're not going to get into, but you can just make some little tweaks to how things show up or don't show up. And then we have the themes here. So you can make multiple themes if you want to do themes for each class or if you want to do themes for each role. All of that's fine. We're just going to go with the default one here. So you can pop up a preview and see what your thing is going to look like here. You can change the duration if you want to see what it's going to look like for longer ones or shorter ones. And then you just have the basic options here. So you can choose what it looks like overall, what the minimum cooldown needs to be before it even does this. And then you can adjust more finely here when it switches to seconds or minutes, the effect that it does when one of these cooldowns finishes. And then if you don't want your shorter cooldowns, like say we have this Rising Sun kick here and it's 8-second cooldown. So if we don't want that one to flash, then we can change this to 10 seconds. And then this one won't flash, but Fist of Fury will because it's longer. And then you can disable the swiping thing here if you just basically want the number countdown. And then here's the options for the font itself. You can change the outline, the font size, shadowing on the font. If you want to offset it, move the countdown into the corner or something, and then the anchoring position for where that's located and the font here. And then lastly, the color options. Now these are when you're getting down in these times. So if something's going to expire soon, this is the color, and then it can zoom into a bigger size or go smaller, I guess, and then under a minute remaining and under an hour remaining, and then if it's a really long cooldown, hours remaining. And then you also have things here like if it's got one charge out of 2, then it'll go to this color, so it'll show you that you're lower on charges. And then if you get loss of control of your character, it'll go to this color. So overall, super simple. Let's see it in action. Okay, so we can see that the longer one there is purple, and then as it goes shorter, it switches to white and zooms in a little bit bigger. And so you can very easily see what things are about to come off cooldown. And very simple. I would say if you're just getting into looking for something like this, and especially if you just use the default action bars and stuff like that, this may cover it for you. There's not a ton of configuration to it. It pretty much works right out of the box. You don't have to make any changes. You get those nice little flashes when things come off of cooldown there, and it just works. So the problem with showing cooldowns on your action bars is that you still run into having to make one of two choices, which is to move your action bars somewhere up more towards the middle of your screen, which then is taking up a lot of real estate in the play area, or you leave it down where they are by default, and then you're staring down at the bottom of your screen most of the time. And a lot of times it's very hard to pay attention, especially in a busy like raid type scenario or Mythic Plus, to see what's going on very quickly. So let's jump into an add-on called Coolline and see what our other options are. So Coolline takes us into a second category of these kind of add-ons. Now, there's a few things out there that will do stuff like this, but what the intent is just to move your procs and ability cooldowns up into a more viewable space. So by default, we can't see anything here. If we type /Coolline, we then get the options menu here, and here's everything. So we can unlock it, and we now have the option to move this around. We can place it anywhere that's visible but not directly blocking the rest of our screen. You can have it down, with your player frame, or you can have it up so that you can be looking at a boss or whatever, depending on your role. And then you can also drag it to rescale it here. Okay, but if we bring up that menu again, so here's the options we have. We have the texture of the bar, the color, the border size, the font, and all the options for that as well. And then we have some options for when we're inactive. Do we want it to go completely opaque or invisible? Then when we are in combat, how visible do we want it to be? And then the scale of the icons. And then we have a couple of other options here. We can flip this bar to be vertical. We can have it run in reverse. And then we can also disable some of these other options here and also make the settings save per character. And if you really mess something up, you can reset it to the default settings. And then once you've got everything positioned where you want it and you've got it set up how you want, then you can lock it, and let's see it in action. Okay, so we'll see it popped up the cooldown for Rising Sun Kick there. And we'll see that as it gets down to a second remaining, then it'll flash there and we know we can use it again. So already you can see the benefit of something like this. We don't have to look down at our action bar to know when something's usable. Obviously, the abilities that we can always use, right? We don't need to see those on here. So these two abilities that we can just use anytime we want, we don't need to look down to see. But if you're waiting to see when Fist of Fury is going to come off cooldown, you don't have to look down here to see it. You can literally just keep going, and you see these two abilities are usable. And so you can basically say, okay, well, this one's about to come off and I can wait and use that. And then this one's about to come off and I can use that. So super simple, and no configuration really needed other than just choosing the scale of it and the position of it. But other than that, it by default just follows anything with a cooldown. If we use any abilities that have a cooldown on them, they'll get added there, and everything else is left. And even if we use a longer cooldown, we can still see that one here. So super simple and very easy to get up and running with this one. You take a couple seconds to set up those settings the way that you'd like them to be, and then you're good to go. Now, I understand some people don't like the all-in-one kind of bar type thing, so let's take a look at Nug running for an alternative. All right, let's take a look at the options here. So if you click on the Help tab here, you've got a couple of options. You shouldn't really need any configuration in this other than just moving it where you'd like. By default, it's loaded up with basically all of the spells in the game. If you do need to add something here, like an item cooldown or a trinket or something that you want to add, then you can add it here. But otherwise, we just click on the general options and we can unlock it. Now we can see we have 2 drag points. There's one under here and one here. And one is for your abilities and one is for your target's abilities. And once you've got those positioned where you'd like them, you can lock it. And then you can choose which timers you want to see here. If you want to see the names of the spells, then you have the bar texture and the size and which direction it grows, if it goes up, or if you put it under your thing, you want it to grow down. And then you also have the option for nameplate bars. And same thing here, you can set it up to be the same or different, however you like. And then you can adjust the fonts here for all this. So let's see what this looks like. So you see you kind of get this combo on certain abilities depending on how the spell works. So if it's just something with a pure cooldown, then you cast it and then it starts showing the countdown till when this is going to be ready again. But if you've got something with a cast time or a channel time, you'll start by getting the channel time here, and then you'll get the cooldown in a smaller thing. And as this gets closer to being ready, then you'll see it gets larger here. Okay, so it looks like 10 seconds is when the bars get bigger or not. And anything longer than that, they go down a little bit smaller. So you see again here, we've got the cast timer for this, and then the cooldown timer for it. So pretty simple, but if you actually want to just be able to see a bar for every ability, unlike the previous add-on, you can just see all of your abilities right here in a quick thing, and they're just over your target. And you can move those to wherever works for you, whatever's visible but not quite in the way. And pretty straightforward and also super simple to set up. So those are the 2 easy ones. But let's say you want to get more advanced. Our next one is called Tell Me When. So straight out of the box, Tell Me When starts you out with this 1 row of 4 buttons. It'll be up here and they won't be filled in yet. And it's pretty straightforward right off the bat to set this up. All you need to do is go into configuration mode by typing /tmw for Tell Me When. And now we're in configuration mode, and you can see we've got a bar here, and if there's nothing assigned to a button, it'll be empty. So when you first load up this add-on, you'll have 4 empty buttons here, and it's really as simple as opening up your spell book and dragging something to a bar here and putting it in one of the boxes, and it will now be tracking that ability, right? So what you can do with this is either just put your most frequently used cooldowns on the bar, and to adjust the size of this, let's say if you have a class that has more than the 4 that it gives you by default, then we type /tmw space options, and we'll get the main menu for the add-on. We're in the general settings to start with. You can make different profiles. I'd recommend making a profile based on class, and then that way you can just use a separate profile for each class, but you don't have to remake this for each character if you have multiple of the same class. And then we have some overall add-on settings here. Most of the stuff is just for generic like bar timer, colorings, and the bar textures, what sound channel the add-on's going to use if you turn on any audio alerts. And then whether you can do sharing in game, you can import and export other people's bar settings or profiles, any of that stuff. But for the most part, we're just going to be working in either the group or icon settings here. So you can see I've set up 3 groups here so far. We have group number 1 is this one here, group number 2 is this one here, and group number 3 is this one here. So you can see you can set up as many of these or as few of these as you like. For the average person, you can probably get away with just doing the 1 bar that it starts you out with. And if you click into the group, you can now see the settings for the group here. Now, here's where you choose when this group is visible. Okay, so you want it to be shown only when you're in combat or not, and then you want it to be shown when you're in a specific role or just a spec. And then here's where you choose the size. So you can go columns is how many wide it is, and rows is how many down it goes. So if you have 10 here and 2, then it'll split that there. You now have 20 buttons, right? So we'll go back to what we had it at before. You can override the default texture if this is a bar. This one is not a bar, but you can see that the chi group here that I made is a bar. So the way you choose that is right up here at the top, right? We have what display method this is using. This bar is displaying icons, right? And if we hover over any of these groups, we get how to click to get different things. If you right click anything, it will bring you straight to the options for that item. If you left click and hold it down, you can drag it around to move where you'd like it to be. If you right click and drag, you can move or copy. So we do this and then we get this little option here. You can either swap two buttons, you can copy a button to another spot, you can just move it to another spot, however you'd like it to go there. And so we have some basic options. We have the option to delete the group if you accidentally make something or need to get rid of something. So this group is icons, right? Now, all it is it gives you an icon box based on how many you chose here. Then you can choose the anchoring and all of that, and layout direction and stuff like that, which way you want it to grow. Then this will basically adjust to how many icons are currently visible. Okay, so let's say we want this bar to only show when we're in combat, and right now it is visible when we're in Windwalker spec. So we can close this, and now we can see all I've done here is opened my spellbook here, and you grab the abilities that you want to be visible on here for your cooldowns. So I've chosen this to be my main DPS cooldowns. All I've had to do is take it and drag it and drop it into a box, and that's it. So if you want to get this thing going as quickly as possible, you'll start out with 4 empty buttons. Literally all you have to do is type that /TMW and then open up your spellbook, drag whatever 4 abilities you want to track in there. And if that's all you need, then you exit configuration mode and you're good to go. So let's take a look at that first bar here and what that's doing. All it's doing is when I enter combat, okay, it's now just showing these 4 abilities that I've told it to track. So it doesn't care about any other abilities here. But if I use something that's in here, you see it just goes away. Okay, so by default, there's really nothing else I need to do. I can just see, hey, this is ready to use. So I just click the button for that. Okay, and it shows me that this one's currently active. And then as soon as those copies go away, then that should go away as well. Okay. And that's it. So it's actually pretty straightforward. You can move these icons to anywhere you like, right? We'll go back into the configuration here now. Just type /TMW. We can drag this wherever we want. And if we drag on here, then we can change the scale of it. You also have these other options here to invert the scale, change the number of groups and columns. Those are all things that you can do directly from this. But if we right click on an icon, we'll go straight into the settings for that specific button. So now we're in the icon settings here, and we can switch between these abilities and see what they're doing, right? So if there's something that can only be used at a certain range, like in proximity or whatever, then you can have it do a range check. And if there's things that don't require a range, they're just cooldowns that you pop or whatever, then you can uncheck that. You can also have it check to see if you have enough mana or energy or whatever to do the ability or not. And then you can also just have it ignore some of these buttons at times. You can have it showing your power bar laid out on top of it. These can all get very, advanced, however you want to do. You can literally modify the display of the text that's over top of it. So if it has multiple stacks like this ability did, then it can show that. But if you don't want to see it, you can just erase this field. There's a ton of options here that you can do, but you don't need to. You can adjust the texture for something if you like. So this is what it looks like if your group is icons. But if we right click on this one, now we can see that this group is displayed as a bar. So this one we want to see in whatever roles, whatever specs. We can choose the bar texture for this, and then we can have it show the icon for it if it's something that has an icon or not. And if we're using this to display something like your energy, or for this, I'm using it to show my chi count. Then all you need to do is go and set it 1 of 1. You can have it show or hide a border on that thing. You can use a custom texture if you like on it, right? So we go into the actual icon settings, and here's where we choose what this bar is showing. So we go into icon, and all I've said is that it is a resource display, and resources will only display if you have this group set to be a bar. You can also, of course, do a vertical bar. So we choose resource display, and then we choose what resource we want to show in this bar. You can show any of these things, and then you can change to a custom texture if you like, and you can tell it to watch. So if you want to watch your focuses, mana, if you're a tank, you can set it up to do that. You can set it to watch your focus target. Then you just make your primary healer your focus, and you can do that. You can really watch a lot of stuff here, which is pretty cool. You can watch for spell cooldowns if you want. If you want to see when your tank has blown shield wall or something like that, you can do item cooldowns. You can know how long until something is going to be ready for your target, or for your focus, or somebody in your party, or for yourself, of course. Then you can track buffs, debuffs, if somebody's missing a buff or debuff. So you could have this show, say, fortitude or something, when that's missing. There's just really like no end to what you can do with this. But at the same time, it's very straightforward and simple to set up. You literally just make a new group, and we go here. And so now we've got this new group, and we can left click and drag this. And even if we don't want to, go through and find our manual things, right? Like say if we just want to track, this, we can do this. But if we also just want it to be a bar here, then we can watch an ability here. Right? So here's something pretty cool. We can make it to be a bar, and then we could set it to only show when we're, in a healer spec. And then we can click on one of these icons here to load it up. And then we can say that we want to watch our focuses, which we would need to have a focus. And then we can just watch their primary resource, and then we can set it to either fill the bar up or to empty the bar out. So you could simply just do this, right? And so now we've got this bar here. We can shrink this down to something a little more manageable here. And let's just say we wanted to watch our focuses, mana or something. So we can now see that my primary resource is full. But as I go to spend this, right, so you can see it's pretty cool that you could, right at a glance, you could make this bar just this. And let's say if we had dragged a major cooldown, right? So let's say we wanted this to be watching our focus's primary resource. And then this one, if we right click, we'll go straight into this one. And then let's say if we want to see a spell cooldown and shield wall. And so with just a couple of clicks here, we can see our focus's mana here, and we could see our tank's major cooldown or whatever. So you could really put anything you want into this, whether it's tracking your own abilities or party members, targets, enemies, boss abilities. You can use this for so many more things than any of these previous add-ons. But at the same time, you don't need to do any of those. So if you get to a point where you just decide you don't need something, then you can simply come into this and hit delete, and that bar's gone. And now we just have our previous 3 groups that I made. And so to show you what I did here, which this really just took me maybe 5 minutes, I made 3 groups here. One of them is my primary damage cooldowns, and I lowered the opacity of this a little bit just so that it wasn't fully visible. And that's right here under the group, and then the group opacity down here at the bottom on the right. And then the second group is my main cooldowns, and those are here. And those are just things that I quickly at a glance may need to see if it's ready to use or not. And then that third group I made here is just watching my chi. So now we can see all 3 of those in action. So I can see that my chi is full now, and now it's at half, right? So I don't have to be looking down here at my player frame necessarily. I can just know when I need to do a spender, or when I need to, use a builder. And depending on the class, these are things that you may or may not need. You may just want to follow your focus or something like that. And then if you use a big cooldown here, then it clears that out. Right, and so we lost that out of here. So it really is pretty straightforward, but the flexibility of being able to add in not only your own resources or abilities, but also things of your party, your target, your focus, any of that stuff, really sets this add-on to a new level beyond what the previous add-ons could do. Okay, so you're telling me that that's not good enough. Let's take a look at our next add-on. You knew it was coming. The last one is WeakAuras. So WeakAuras. You either love or hate this add-on. There's kind of no in between. For the people that swear by this add-on, you can basically do anything in the game. You can recreate complete menus. You can show any information that you want. You can use it to do a ton of things. But with that power comes some necessary caution. A while back, there was actually someone who had written a WeakAura, and this is not a joke. What they had written this WeakAura to do on the surface level was to basically give some raid functionality for a boss fight, and it just was supposed to show like a cooldown or something for a boss mechanic or whatever. But what the author had also coded into this that nobody realized was there for a while was that if he went up to another player who had imported this WeakAura and just sent a whisper to that player, if he was standing close to that player, the WeakAura would trigger the WeakAura to open trade and trade gold and click accept. So the guy who wrote the WeakAura was using it to basically go up to random characters, and it was kind of trial and error. If they had his WeakAura installed, then all he had to do was go up and whisper them something and it would trade him their gold. So it is very powerful, but can potentially be dangerous. So with that caveat out of the way, just know, be careful importing other people's WeakAuras. Okay, so we bring up the WeakAuras menu. Now, by default, you're not going to have anything in here. I have imported a couple here just to show you, like, scratching the surface of what you can do with this add-on. I will leave some links to the WeakAuras that I imported in the description, so feel free to check those out. These things with updates can sometimes break and stuff like that, so they may not be working at the time you're watching this video, but feel free to try them out. And worst case, I'm going to walk you through very briefly how to do a little bit of what we're doing here. This is by no means a WeakAuras tutorial because I literally don't know all the things you can do with this. But just to show you two examples of things that you can do with this add-on that replicate some of these other add-ons we've previously looked at, because you can really do any of it with it. So the first one that I found here is one that I imported that was just a single bar here, and it's pretty simple. All it's actually doing is just looking at your first action bar and basically checking if anything that gets used on that bar triggers a cooldown, and if it does, it will then pop that ability up here. So instead of showing you what things are off cooldown, it instead is showing you which things are currently on cooldown. So basically, if anything is on here, you can't use it yet, and otherwise it's all clear. So it's kind of good in that it keeps only the fewest things up. It's just showing you which things are currently not available. And so what I did here was I basically just imported it and then I duplicated it, and I came in here to the settings and looked here at the end. And so all it was doing was looking at the first action bar, which was action slot 1 through 12. And I wanted to basically also show the cooldowns for this action bar here. So I basically just worked my way up by 12s until I found the action bar that was this one. And so I have this one, which is showing the first action bar, and the second one, which is showing this action bar. So while it basically looks right now like, why would I do that? I'm just putting these two action bars up here. But the difference is that these are only visible when certain abilities are on cooldown, and the rest of the time everything else is hidden. And of course you can move this anywhere you like. You can rescale it, you can change the alpha of it so that it's more see-through if you like. And then the other one that I found was this single one, which was just tracking buffs, and if you were missing your 1 hour buff, right, like power word fortitude or whatever, then it would show you like a glowing ring around the outside of it. So I thought, well, well, how can I kind of replicate the Omni cooldown kind of thing here on the action bars with that? So if you don't want something in the middle of your screen, but you want something much more visible down here. So I imported that and I played around with it, and I'll show you the settings that I have here. So the first ones are just for basic abilities that have a cooldown, and those ones, all I did was basically just imported that and went into the trigger, changed the trigger from the spell that it was to the spell that I wanted it to be, and then basically just told it to only load on this class and spec. And now, like, this one is only available in Windwalker, but this one is available in both of these specs. So I went ahead and checked that. And all it's doing is basically when it triggers, which is that if this action is usable, in other words, I'm in combat and I have 3 chi, then what it's going to do is it's going to trigger on, which will turn on a glow and it will show the glow. And then I did the frame selector here and chose action button 3. And when it's not available, which means that the trigger will turn off, then the on hide is the reverse. So it's the glow and then hide and action button 3, and then there's nothing really else to it. So all it does is basically, if this ability is usable, then it will glow, and if it's not, it'll turn off. And same thing for Rising Sun Kick. But then I thought, what else can I do with this? So I started playing around with some more of the triggers and conditions and things like that. And so what I did in some of these cases was, like I did with Tiger Palm, I made it so that if I had no chi, then it would highlight. So basically I know, hey, I need to do a builder. But then I also did this second one. This is for the blackout kick. So what I did here was, if I have full chi, so greater than or equal to chi 5, and both of these are on cooldown, right? So I basically loaded in the conditions that both of these abilities are on cooldown and that my power is over this, then it will trigger. So I just kind of played around with these conditions, and then same thing, just turned on the glow or off the glow. But I just played around with the triggers and the conditions, and I came up with these couple of abilities here, and you can see the settings that I did here. So this is for this, basically if my power is above or equal to 50%, and then told it to basically do the same thing. So let me show you how these work in action. So remember, these are literally just 2 WeakAuras that I found on the website and imported, and then I just duplicated them and then tweaked around with the settings. So it started with just 1 bar that was following this action bar's cooldowns, which I then customized to be these 2 bars. And then the other one was literally just highlighting a buff when I could use it and I didn't currently have it on. And if you watch down here and watch here, you'll see what I was able to do with both of those. So you'll see it's showing me that both of these are on cooldown, but as soon as it's off cooldown, then it disappears. Same with Fists of Fury. But then based on the conditions that I set up in there, it's recommending to me what to use, right? I don't have enough chi to do any of my good abilities, and this is the very last priority. So it's recommending that I do this. I can do this now. It's saying to use this because I'm full and I don't have enough chi. Now it's saying to use that because I'm full. But if I get up to here, now I've set it to this extra one to basically recommend to burn a chi so that I don't cap. So that's literally all with that one WeakAura that I imported. And I just, with messing around with the settings a little bit, I now kind of have like this recommendation thing. But instead of just going off of somebody else's recommendations, I've actually chosen the entire priority for everything. So pretty cool that literally with one super basic WeakAura, I was able to come up with this. So of course, you know, you can think outside of the box, think inside of the box, and, just look at the WeakAuras that people have up there and then think, like, what's the closest thing to what I'm trying to accomplish here with this, and which one of these actually does it? And if there isn't something that does it, then, what can I find on here and customize in a way that will let me do that? So, if you just want to see the cooldowns or what's not on cooldown or whatever, this WeakAura is doing the job just fine. But if you'd like to see some kind of cool stuff like this, of almost like a rotation recommendation, except it's not, somebody else just telling you what to do, I've actually made all these decisions, and all of that is straightforward and just decided here in the WeakAuras. So, it's not that complicated, really. You can play around with this stuff, but like I said, if you're a beginner with add-ons and stuff, this may not be where you want to start. But, the point being here that if you want super simple and you just want to keep your action bars, go with one of those first couple ones. And if you want something with a little more programmability, a little more customization and stuff, and aren't afraid to get into, tweaking some settings and stuff, then those second two might be for you. Okay, so this last one here is an honorable mention. The reason I left it off the list is because it hasn't been updated in about a half a year, and it does give some Lua errors and stuff like that. It does still seem to work just fine, but test it out yourself if you like how it looks or works. It's WeakAuras. The thing that I like about WeakAuras is that it works just like OmniCC, right? It gives you the cooldowns on your action bar buttons, but it does one extra thing that I haven't found anything else that does this, and I love this feature about it. And I'll show you here in combat. Okay, so you can see that we can see the cooldown going here. But you can see here on the bottom, we've got this second number in the bottom left corner, and you can also see it here on spinning crane kick. Now, what this is actually not a cooldown. It's actually a buff that I get. So when I do Tiger Palm here, it gives me this 12 seconds to use spinning crane kick, and I get an extra 10%. So I can see how long that buff is going to last. So if you're doing AoE, of course, you want to make sure that you're getting that buff when you do it. So you can easily see here how long that's going to last, and refresh it when it's running out. The other way that it works, and I will show you this here, when you're in a healing spec, you can see, if you've got something that has a cooldown or charges or whatever, normally you would use the ability and you've got the cooldown here. But typically, if you cast a heal on somebody, there wouldn't be a cooldown on this hot, right? But I would like to know if that hot is still running on whoever, if I'm, targeting myself or a player or something like that. But those other ones wouldn't show me that. But this one, you can see here, I can see I still have one charge left of this, but I can see I've got, another 12 seconds left on this hot on myself. So I could make a choice of, well, do I need to refresh this on my tank, or do I have time to cast this? Okay, well, I can get this off before that even runs out and then do it again. So that's a feature I haven't really seen with anything else. And I really love that I get those little bonus effect numbers, So see here, I can see how much time is remaining on this, and then when I need to redo it. So that's a great little feature, but like I said, it seems to work on most of the bar add-ons. It also works on the default UI, but you do get some errors, and I know some people are not fond of that. And like I said, it hasn't been updated in, a half a year. So if you like how, the functionality works there and you don't mind getting a few errors every once in a while, this is still a great add-on and might be worth trying out. So that'll do it. A lot of options here to help you to stay on top of those procs, active abilities, cooldowns, hots, all that stuff. I hope one of these really works well for you and helps you to just improve your gameplay and, get better at your class, especially on those alts. I know sometimes it's tough to keep track of that stuff. If you made it this far, thank you, and I hope to see you in the next one. Goodbye. That will do it for this episode. If you've enjoyed this, remember, pressing the like button is absolutely free. Subscribe and stay tuned for more Game on End.